Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about a new node in n8n, which is called Guardrails. This node allows you to directly block or filter the data that you run through your workflow. Let me show you an example and explain in a bit more detail why you might need this. So here, I've built a small workflow with a few different examples to demonstrate exactly how it works. You need to make sure you're on the latest version. You can run any of these scenarios. I'll leave it in our community. If anyone doesn't know, we've also launched a community. So people come there either to learn n8n or because they already know how to do some automations. And there we discuss different options and problems that people encounter and try to help solve them. Small businesses also join, so feel free to join the community. It's absolutely free, and I'll be waiting for you there. Now, let's continue. So here we have this kind of card trail. To add it, you simply need to click the plus sign, select Guardrail, and here you have several different options. Check text, align chances, and sanitize text. We'll go through them now. Let's go through them step by step. The first option I want to look at is removing personal data, for example, a phone number. Why is this necessary? For instance, if you want to transfer something to AI and you want to filter out certain data, say you don't want a phone number, some API keys, or other data that could leak to get in there, that's why you need to use Guardrail for this. Previously, you had to try filtering with scripts, but now, thanks to them, there's a separate node for this. So, what do we need to do? Let's launch the first node. Here we see a text with a phone number. I selected sanitize text, one of the types, and personal data, which is one of the filtering options. Here we'll add personal data. We can specify exactly which personal data we want to filter and remove, or just select all. Now, if I run it, you'll see that the number is redacted and it goes into a separate property that's already here, so you can do something else with it. The main thing is that the number doesn't go any further. This is very convenient if you're working with a client or your own data and want to transfer something. In most cases, the agent doesn't need to know any personal data because no matter how they're built, unless you're very experienced. Let me elaborate a bit more on why this process is so important. When handling sensitive information, such as phone numbers, email addresses, or API keys, it's crucial to ensure that this data does not get exposed unintentionally. If such information were to leak, it could lead to privacy violations, security breaches, or even legal issues depending on the context. By using Guardrail, you are adding an extra layer of protection to your workflow, making sure that any personal or sensitive data is properly identified and handled before it can be accessed by other systems or individuals. This is especially important when working with artificial intelligence systems, as they may process and store data in ways that are not always transparent. Guardrail's dedicated node for sanitizing text makes it much easier to implement these safeguards without having to write complex scripts or custom code. You simply select the type of data you want to filter, such as personal data, and the system takes care of the rest. This not only saves time, but also reduces the risk of human error, which can occur when manually filtering data. In summary, using Guardrail to remove personal data is a best practice that helps protect both your clients and yourself from potential risks associated with data exposure. Open router? It doesn't matter. This data can leak out and you never know where it might end up. There was a recent case, for example, where all private conversations, private chats that you clicked share on in ChatGPT to share with someone, ended up being publicly accessible. Everything that was written there, all those public links, anyone who wanted to could scroll through, save, or use them. That's why you should always use Guardrail wherever there might be any sensitive data, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant it may appear. Even if you think the information is harmless, it is always better to be cautious and take extra steps to protect your privacy and the privacy of others. Now let's look at the second example, which will help illustrate this point even further and provide more context for why these precautions are so important. The second example I wanted to show here involves, for instance, an API key. If we move to the next node, we'll see that sanitize text is also enabled here. When we use the sanitize text operator, it means it's some kind of script. There's no AI or agent involved, just a script with 3 nodes that directly filters the data. Here you can choose secret case is selected, and there are different levels of protection, so to speak. It's selected at all these levels and it filters at each one. Honestly, I couldn't quite figure out how to make it so that the secret would pass through here. In this case, the secret doesn't get through, so you can set it to balance by default and see whether it passes or not. And then if you notice that something like an API key is still getting through, you can immediately switch to strict mode. We see that the output here contains no secret. The data has been successfully redacted. Now, let's look at the third scenario. Here we have website links. So I launch the first node and we see what comes in. Some URL comes in. And here, what can we do? We can, for example, allow or block certain URLs. If I run it now, let's see, we see that guardrail. Let's look at the third scenario. Here I launched it and we see that the input received a sentence that contains the URL test google.com. And here I've already executed this node and we can see that it was redacted. It didn't go any further. There's a check here that says whether it's allowed or blocked. In this case, it's blocked. So right now URLs are blocked, but if we add, for example, google.com here, then it lets it through successfully and you can continue working with it as usual. Here it says that google.com was detected and it's allowed. So in some cases you can use this, which might be helpful for you. Now about custom clean, this is basically the same example, but here you can use Regex. If you don't know what Regex is, please feel free to Google it or join our community where we can suggest resources for you to read and explain how to work with it. Here, you set a pattern you want to match. It could be any text string, a phone number, or something else. If we run it here, we see that this is for the case specified for Gauhi. It detects it, and if we, for example, change the text here and then run it again, it doesn't find anything. With Go here, it finds it without the word to, please. It finds the sentence and the exact piece that matches. Now, we can take a closer look at the second approach. So that was sanitize text, and there's also a method where we specifically specify check text by violation. This is where the AI agent helps us directly. We connect to a model that we're interested in. Let's see how it works. I run it here, and I see that we have an array as input. I specifically added both Russian and English text, update password, obnovite parole. We split it into 3 elements, and here we run our model on each element. Let's see what we got. Notice that even if we specifically specify a keyword in Russian here, the system still ignores it. So, in other words, it simply skips it. If we look at the fail branch, we actually specified the word password there, which means it should not skip any entries that contain this keyword. And it blocked the one with password. But if we look at update password, where I specified password, it doesn't pay attention to password. So it still doesn't work well with the Russian language. Keep this in mind when developing your workflows. But look around, let it through, because there isn't a single keyword present here. And one more example that I actually wanted to show you today is, just to be clear, here, there are both Russian and English sentences as well. Let's take a look. The principle is the same. We split the array into elements. Let's see what we have here. I wash my dog every day. I wash my dog every day. And in the English version, so the sixth example we'll look at today is directly, the principle is the same. Here we skip in this array, break it into parts. Here you can see what's written. And here I have selected, let's choose jailbreak. As you can see, there are a lot of them here, right? Some of them are repeated, like the one that was sanitize text. Now, in this case, jailbreak means that if someone tries to do prompt injection, if you know what that is, go to the community and we'll explain it to you there. Well, to put it briefly, it's when someone tries to hack your model using a prompt and extract some data. This is a common practice, especially with new models that have been added there. But in this case, let's go back to the previous one and take a look. See, here, there's nothing special in these. It's just some text. But here, if you pay attention, this is already one of the ways of prompt injection, the most basic and simple one. But the model should catch it and say, whoa, hold on, someone is trying to hack you. Let's run it and see what happens. I'll repeat, here an LLM is already being used. So this request will actually cost some money. If in the previous first 4 examples, it didn't cost you anything, it's just a script, here an LLM is already being used. And let's take a look at what it successfully let through and which branches failed. This is exactly the coverage I mentioned. This is prompt injection. And here you can send an alert, log something, or block the user who did this. In other words, that's a separate logic. But in short, that's what guardrails are and what they're for. It's a very powerful tool that you can use in your workflows, especially when you're working with personal data, API keys, or when you need to check, for example, whether something is spam or not. Guardrails can also be used for that. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and I want to give a special thanks to those who have already joined the community. Join the community. The link is in the description. It's free. We're gathering people who want to learn automation, who already know how to automate, and small businesses that need automation. Go there. You'll find everything you need. There are tutorials, training, and all the examples I show here will be attached there, including the video and the template from this video. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.